we are failing our kids. The educational system, we're failing our kids. Parents, they have to work harder, and nurture less at home. Um, this is why I am personally involved and invested in this teen programming because I see kids and they want to do things, but we're constantly saying, oh, they don't want to do nothing. They just want to be on their phones all day, and it's just like, no, if you show them, they are going to go to it.
Welcome to Key Community Leaders on the Progressive Access Zone podcast, sponsored by the Hispanic Community Counseling Service. I'm your guest host, Atlas X, and my first guest today is Jewel Felder-James, who's the director of teen programming at the Boys and Girls Club. Jewel, it's great to have you here today. This is the first episode of Key Community Leaders, and I'm glad that you could be my first guest. How you doing today?
I'm doing well.
So let's get right into it, all right? Tell me, Boys and Girls Club, what's it all about and how long have you been the director?
Well, the Boys and Girls Club has been on the scene first as the Boys Club. It didn't become co-ed, I believe, until the 1990s, early 1990s, of where it was the Boys and Girls Club. However, it started out as like a safe haven for boys, as a safe place for them to do sports, work out, but just to keep them off the streets. It was a place for them to eat, So, but now the Boys and Girls Club is nationwide, as you know, and many others. And we provide a safe space for all children. And that is from kindergarten on up to the 12th grade. I run the teens program. So, and I am the director of that teen programming for Caring People Alliance. And I've been functioning under that for about 5 years, but I've been working for the company for 10 years.
So 10 years under your belt. Now, I had an opportunity about maybe 2 months ago to come out to your location off of Cecil B. Moore. And what is that location again?
It is at 1701 North Broad Street.
All right. And what's the name of that location?
It's called the R.W. Brown Boys and Girls Club.
Right. And, it's a great facility. My colleague Mo and I, when we came out there, it's sort of like a YMCA on one hand. Yes, you have the basketball court, you've got a swimming pool, an exercise area similar to a Y, but it goes beyond that. I mean, you also have a cooking facility, right?
Yes.
You've got an area for 3D machines. Let's talk about this area where you have the sewing, the 3D machine, and how all that other components and the horticultural sort of department. Tell me about these different departments you have there.
Well, I gotta say that it stemmed from the children. So, and it was off of their interests, things that they were interested in. So when I started in this capacity, of working with the teens, they expressed clothing design, that they wanted to start their own clothing design, their own, their own brands. So the thought of entrepreneurship came up a whole level. In which it was just like, okay, on my own personal experiences, it's always good to have a variety of things that you offer and resources for those kids. So at the R.W. Brown Center, we have got our music studio, we have got our 3D printers, in which the kids, honestly, they just was fascinated with 3D printing.
Right.
And we also have, as you said, the sewing and embroidery. A lot of kids will, how can I say, reuse, I guess, their old hoodies or jackets, hats, and they will embroider things on these to make these, once old clothing, a hot item now.
And it's also something you can do with sneakers, or you were telling me.
You can do that as well with sneakers. We also have a sneaker design on a small scale, but we definitely have got a sneaker design as well. We also have our, the youth have their podcasting. There are a lot of components, art, like animation as well. So there are a lot of things that they can get themselves into, but also we just keep providing resources for them, um, so that they can have something in which they can build their skills.
And you also have this like horticultural area, all right? And then there's also an area where you have some hamsters. And so why don't you talk about those two areas for a minute?
Okay, so the gardening thing is something that was kind of like in the community in itself,
Mhm.
in which like you have got community gardens. So they actually have an area where they can grow their own things, but unlike the community gardens, it's not exposed to others picking at their crops, or anything like that. So it's a more protected area in which they can honestly be satisfied that they actually grew these vegetables or whatever. But it also promotes healthy eating, so they're more likely to eat those carrots and lettuce and everything that they would probably say no to if they didn't grow it. So if they grew it, they're going to want to eat it, they're going to want to prepare it. So
Wow.
that's what we're
This
doing.
is a tremendous facility. And for all of those of you outside listening to this podcast, I mean, outside of having a bed there, you could pretty much live at this facility that you had right there. So, Joel, tell me, you've been there for a while now. You talked about a safe, like haven location.
Mhm.
We all know what's happening right now across the United States, especially in the city of Philadelphia. You have the gun violence, carjackings,
Mhm.
other type of just drug-related crimes. But you've got a great facility, and plus you have two other locations, which we want to touch on in a few minutes. But what is your perspective right now on what's happening with today's youth and from that mindset that we see playing out? And of course, they can come to your location where you've got some great staff to work with them. But what's your take on what's happening? And then we also have the Kensington area, which I know you're very familiar if you're not too far from Kensington. And we all know that has been deemed the Walmart of heroin and opioid epidemic. But what's your thoughts on what's been happening in this last, say, 3 or 5 years right here in Philadelphia?
Wow. It's it's quite a bit. To say it in one sentence would give it injustice, um, an injustice. Let me say it that way. Um, I will say with our children, we are failing our kids. The educational system, we're failing our kids. Parents, they have to work harder, and nurture less at home. Um, this is why I am personally involved and invested in this teen programming, because I see kids and they want to do things, but we're constantly saying, oh, they don't want to do nothing. They just want to be on their phones all day, and it's just like, no, if you show them, they are going to go to it, So the kids that have signed up, it's so funny when parents tell them, well, you got to go there, and then when they get there, they don't want to leave. Um, it's only because I hear from these kids and they say, Miss Jewel, I don't feel like being home. I don't feel like being at home. It ain't nothing to do.
And what age range are you pretty much when it comes to the kids, boys and girls? Now, is this open to whether you're black, white, Chinese, Latino? Who is the Boys and Girls Club open to?
It is open to everyone. It doesn't matter. We don't discriminate. I
Mm.
most certainly don't discriminate. It's anybody who just want to be in a safe space and build on your skills.
So let me ask you this. Sometimes, I guess when people are young, not that you can't be, when I say older, from a teenager to when you're 20s and 30s, but a lot of times maybe when you're between the ages of I'll say 5 through 10, you may hear in school, well, what do you want to be when you grow up, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, some parents can be more encouraging in telling their children to say, hey, whatever you want to do, be supportive. And you have other parents who may, especially in some cultures, that may say, well, hey, I know my child must be a doctor or a lawyer. And they have good intentions, and sometimes that works out well. And you then have other parents or friends who might sort of be sort of dream killers and, squashing that idea. So, but Jewel, when you think about what's going on out here and you having the kids that are coming in, okay, and we go to different locations on what's called the Live and Love Gun Violence Prevention Tour, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Where do you draw the line between, like, I have a friend where I've seen her work very closely with her daughter. Her daughter's straight A, she went to Georgetown, everything's really worked out, and you can see the influence the parent had on the child. Sometimes you have parents that are more hands off, and not saying a kid can't excel, but sometimes you need that support. So, how much responsibility, whether it's just getting good grades in school or actually making sure, hey, your kid is not out in the streets creating mischief, all right? Because you do have a lot of young parents. Where do you draw the line on how much is parent responsibility versus the child needing to be held accountable to some level? But once again, we're talking only a teenager, but where do you draw the line from what you see coming through the door?
I don't draw a line. That's the thing. You have got to have a connection throughout all things. Because if you don't have the parent support, that kid, and then a mentor or someone else within that circle, where's the village? Like if you just cut it off of, okay, teens, you're responsible for this. Parents, you're responsible for this. Ms. Jewel, you're responsible for that. There's still no connection. So it's going to be a failure. If you don't connect all of these things together, there's no success. So when it comes down to culpability, we're all held accountable. Everyone in a village.
Now, this is the R.W. Brown location right now we're talking about.
Yes.
And what's the exact address for this location?
1701 North 8th Street.
All right. And what would you say right now, as far as the from a demographic standpoint, whether it's Black, white, Latino, Asian, what's the demographic of coming to that location right there?
Predominantly, it is African American, but we do have a strong Latino population, but we have a growing Caucasian population.
All right. Now, with that being said, you were on the news recently because you opened a new location, and you've also told me you had 2 other facilities. So let's talk about those other 2 facilities that are under you, and what are you looking to do there?
Okay, so at our West Philadelphia site, West Philadelphia Boys and Girls Club, and that's located at 5845 Catherine Street. And at this site, we house a drones program where kids get to build their drones and compete their drones in drone soccer. But also, too, it will be 5 of our teens who are 16 and older who are able to take the test to get their license to fly drones.
And you say in something involving soccer and the drones combined together?
Yeah.
So what's happening here? Let's talk about that for a minute. When you say soccer, drones, and soccer, how are we combining that?
Well, it was a young lady, and she had came to me when we had our ribbon cutting ceremony, and she said that she did a drones soccer's program. So you have the drones who actually function as players, in which the kids manipulate the drones to play soccer.
And so the drone is physically pushing the soccer ball? All right, flying around, pushing.
Yes.
So, okay, flying. Okay.
Yes.
And this drone program, is it sponsored by somebody? Like, does a kid have an instructor come in to show them actually how to fly the drone? And then you're saying they can get their license?
It's an instructor that shows them how to build
Okay.
their own drones.
Great.
And fly it and maintain it.
Wow. And so how many people are eligible for this? And this is the West Philly branch, right?
Yes,
So
this
that's
is.
roughly how many kids, and how long have you been over the West Philly branch?
Since it opened, I'm not head of the whole site. I am just head of the teens program at that site. So I have it's about 15 right now because this is a beginning program, the drones program. So we're starting at 15. And then we'll see how successful it is, and then we'll add more as the years go on.
Wow, that sounds tremendous. Now, once again, I said I saw you on the news, and this was for your 3rd location, which you sort of had a ribbon cutting ceremony.
Yes.
So let's talk about that location, and where is that at?
Okay, so this location is at 2833 South 15th Street. This is our South Philadelphia branch. And this branch, this teen program or this restoration, it took the whole of the basement of the site, and this area is exclusively for teens. I had influence on the renovations and things that must be added to it so that it is teen friendly when it starts, but it already has started.
Right. And being that at this location team, is there anything going to be specific at this location? Because we've got the drones at the West Philly location. Obviously, we have a lot of things at the one over in the North area, okay, at R.W. Brown, okay? Is there anything specific that's going to stand out at this South Philly location?
Yes, so we have a dedicated space for spray painting. We also are able to do acrylic nails. We are also housing our e-games league
Oh, okay. Let's
there
talk
as
about now.
well.
That's going to be in there. And who and how did you come across the e-games? Because that's something that is very competitive. You have teens, adults, sometimes just competing city or even internationally. So, what is your goal for this e-game programs?
Well, it's just because I got a little taste of the e-games, and I took some kids out with a gentleman by the name of Edward, and he kind of showed us how the e-gaming thing worked in the competitions. We went out there and we competed. We didn't win, but the experience was great. The kids loved it, so that was something that they want to incorporate. I mean, like mostly all my kids play video games,
Right.
and it's just like, why don't we just go ahead and move forward with this e-gaming thing? But in that community too, e-gaming is very strong in that community. So I definitely want to push that forward. But even though I have separate sites, it does not mean that whatever that I'm offering or what is offered at one site, that any kids from any of the other sites cannot experience and go to that site. So we have got vans in which we can transport them to the other site so that they can have those experiences as well.
All right. I hope everyone heard that. All right. That she can transport you from one location to another. Now, Jewel, you also told me at this South Philly location, that you're going to have something in June. You have some 30 slots available for teenagers. Why don't you talk about this employment opportunity that's going to be taking place on June 1st?
Okay, so I would like to not call it an employment opportunity, but they get to earn some money during the summer for 6 weeks. And pretty much what it is career to learn. It's a new, let me say, how can I say, a new workforce development during this time. So this workforce development is for teens, and we've got two different programs. So it's the JEVS program, and then we also have got our OST.
Okay.
So JEVS pretty much takes care of the 12-year-olds on up to 24-year-olds, right?
Okay.
But OST is high school only.
Okay.
Okay, so I wanted my kids to have that opportunity, all kids, to have an opportunity. My middle school kids, my 13-year-olds, for them to be able to make money, because just with the OST program, they can't. But what they're doing is that they're all concentrating on their careers, their skills, their entrepreneurship endeavors. Whatever it is that they're doing is skill building, is career development. It's all about them looking at themselves.
Right. And so when you think about today's teenager or young adult, right, you mentioned entrepreneur. I mean, the days, of course, of maybe, not that it's impossible, but maybe having employment for 30 years at one employer is probably over for the most part. You now have so much options out there, whether you want to work online, you want to be self-employed, but you still can be a lawyer, a doctor, and work for an organization or be employed yourself. What's your thought on that? I mean, do you feel kids need to go to college to get that formal education, or maybe go further and get a master's or PhD? Or do you feel in today's environment that they're better off maybe, at least getting that high school education and then perhaps maybe considering being an entrepreneur and maybe getting some type of business training? Where do you fall with that?
Well, my thing is all of the above. Okay. So it depends on what you're looking for, what you're trying to do in life. Some things they do require that you have a degree. And some things it doesn't. It may be just training or a certification or a licensing. Or you might do an internship, or shadow. It depends on what that kid wants to do and what they want to get into. And there are so many other levels underneath certain careers. It's just like, it's kind of endless, but I have to say that it depends. But everybody is not college bound, I don't force college. It's just an option. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, Jewel, we just started to get to know each other. We're building on a relationship. I look at you as one of our community hub partners. Okay, that we've already been talking about some things we can do together.
Hmm.
So you are on, one of the key community leaders in this Philadelphia area. And as we get ready to close out this first episode of Key Community Leaders, all right?
Hmm.
Once again, you started off by talking about how it was a safe haven for boys. Now it's a safe haven for girls. Also, it's just a great place for different options to learn things and spend time and network together.
Hmm.
Joel, what do you think when it comes to the new mayor in the city right now versus what we as key community leaders are doing? Is it going to take to maybe repair what's going on in the city? Because, you've heard me say that we have to sort of deprogram people in order to reprogram them because there's so many negative influences out there. So in closing, what would you say is your thoughts on a solution or part of, to do to try to change the culture of what's happening here in the city with our young adults? I'm going to say anywhere from 15 to 35,
Hmm.
teenagers and young adults. What's your thoughts on that?
The village. Like you said, it has got to change the culture, our community. We all have got to change. The elders, we need to step up. We need to stop being afraid, and we need to address these kids. Let them know I hear you. You know what I mean? I see you. Nowadays it's just like our elders aren't stepping up to the plate. They too afraid to.
Ah, well, there you go, right there, right? That's part of it. And, I'm doing my best to, we've got a good network of individuals we're working with. I'm
Mhm.
glad to have you here today on our first episode of Key Community Leaders. And once again, this is Jewel Felder-James, who's the director of teen programming at the Boys and Girls Club. I really appreciate you being on our first episode today, Jules. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll see you again on Key Community Leaders, the Progressive Access Zone podcast, sponsored by the Hispanic Community Counseling Service.